I never thought a simple trap in the alien forest would change my life forever. One wrong step, one careless pull of a string, and suddenly I wasn't just hunting strange wildlife. I had caught her, an alien woman with ears like golden leaves, trembling with fear, convinced I meant harm. I didn't, but convincing her, that was going to be another adventure entirely. Marcus squinted through the dense alien foliage, blinking against the faint bioluminescent glow that clung to the mossy undergrowth like tiny stars caught in a spiderweb. He adjusted the straps of his utility belt, which carried more half-baked gadgets than actual useful equipment, and took a cautious step forward, careful not to trip over the phosphorescent roots that seemed determined to coil around his boots. "Okay, Marcus," he muttered, "today is the day. Today we catch the legendary floating fungi grazer, not your own foot, not again." He kicked lightly at a root which responded with a subtle twitch as if it were laughing at him. The trap had been his pride and his embarrassment in equal measure. It was a crudely engineered lattice of retractable energy threads, designed to ensnare anything roughly the size of a forest hare, or so he hoped. He had tested it once on a patch of grass, and ended up with half his toolbox tangled in the shimmering filaments. Yet here he was, back in the alien forest, trying again with a newfound optimism and a nervous sense of adventure that made him hum an off-key space shanty. "Floating fungi grazer, if you're out there, beware," he whispered theatrically. "I have prepared snacks, and by snacks I mean other possibly edible, hopefully harmless items." He crouched low, adjusting the final tension of the trap with his gloved hands, and waited. Minutes stretched into the kind of silence that made him question every life choice leading up to this point, including the decision to leave Earth in the first place. Then came a faint rustle, a fluttering of air, a soft hum that seemed to reverberate through the iridescent trees. Marcus held his breath, remembering every sci-fi adventure he had read, every story where someone looked into the eyes of the unknown and immediately regretted it. Except in his stories, he rarely caught the unknown in a trap, and certainly never with his clumsy energy threads. When he pulled the trap closed, expecting perhaps the scuttling silhouette of a small, floating critter, he blinked twice, then 3 times. There, tangled and slightly hovering, was not a rabbit-sized fungus grazer but a being with a human-like form, delicate and slender, her skin catching the glow of the forest in faint, shifting patterns. Her eyes, wide and luminous, darted between him and the trap, and her ears long, tapering elegantly above her head like twin leaves quivering in a gentle wind, twitched in alarm. Marcus froze. "Oh," he whispered. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no. You are not a rabbit." He swallowed hard, backing up 2 careful steps, then tripped over a root with a loud thump. The alien woman's eyes widened further, a mixture of fear and incredulity, and Marcus cursed under his breath, mumbling apologies. I didn't mean, I swear I'm not a predator. I'm a very bad wildlife enthusiast." She hissed something in her melodic, almost musical language, and Marcus blinked. He had no idea what she said, but her tone carried every universal warning his species knew. Stay away. He raised both hands in a comically exaggerated gesture of peace, knocking over his container of alien snacks. Glittering nuts bounced across the forest floor. He winced. "Right, yes," he said, scrambling to pick them up. "Terrible first impression. Classic. Nothing to see here except my dignity slowly evaporating." The alien woman flailed lightly against the energy threads, her movements graceful yet frantic. Marcus couldn't help but notice the elegance in the panic, the way her long ears flicked in rapid, expressive beats, as if conducting an invisible orchestra of fear. He coughed awkwardly, attempting humor in the only way he could. "You're faster than you look," he said, hoping it sounded reassuring rather than absurd. "Most rabbits don't wave their arms like that, or, ears. Ears are fast too. Very aerodynamic." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion mingled with what might have been the faintest flicker of curiosity. He knelt carefully beside the trap, mindful of every step. "Okay, deep breaths," he whispered to himself, then louder. "And to you, Lady Rabbit. No, no, that's terrible. Alien woman, not great either." He rubbed the back of his neck, sending a small cascade of bioluminescent spores into the air, which glittered like confetti. I'm not here to hurt you. Promise. I need to untangle you and then we can both go home. You to wherever home is, me, probably back to my failed trapping experiments." He fumbled with the energy threads, trying to loosen them without startling her. One snap, one accidental flail, and he risked triggering her panic again. He tried to hum a soft, calming tune, though it came out like the offbeat rhythm of a drunken spaceship engine. She twitched as if assessing whether this human was a threat or merely hopeless. Marcus decided to bet on hopeless. "Yep," he muttered, "hopeless wins." As he worked, small humorous disasters kept unfolding. He dropped a tool into a glowing pond, only to watch it float like a rubber duck. When he reached for it, the alien woman jumped, not in fear, but in what might have been amused surprise, ears flicking upward in a rhythm that could have been applause. Marcus laughed nervously. You do that a lot, don't you? Judging clumsy humans silently. Fair. I would too." She tilted her head, and Marcus could have sworn he saw the faintest curve of a smile tug at her lips before she snapped back to wide-eyed alertness. Finally, after what felt like hours but was likely minutes, the last energy thread released, and she stepped free. She hovered just a few inches above the moss, watching him carefully, every muscle poised for flight or fight. Marcus wiped his brow, pretending to be calm, though his heart raced. "There we go," he said, bowing awkwardly. "All free. Please don't, zap me with alien energy beams. I'd like to keep my eyebrows, thank you." She didn't respond verbally, but her long ears twitched in what he interpreted as either cautious amusement or disbelief at his ridiculousness. He decided to assume amusement. It was a compliment of sorts. He offered a floating snack, carefully balanced on a stick and not remotely threatening toward her. She eyed it as though it might bite. Marcus quipped, "It's just a snack, probably edible, possibly nutritious. Definitely not alive unless you count the mild sentience of space nuts. They're a tricky bunch." The alien woman's gaze followed the snack, then darted back to him. With a fluid grace that made him gasp, she snatched it and retreated a few feet, crunching it delicately. Marcus clapped softly. "Excellent progress, you've eaten. I consider that a victory, small, tentative, but a victory nonetheless." They both relaxed slightly, the tension dissolving into an awkward but genuinely funny rapport. Marcus stepped back, rubbing his hands. "So, you're not a rabbit, you're not a predator, I'm not a hunter. We both survived and I, most importantly, kept my eyebrows. Fantastic." He laughed at the absurdity and she, Lyara, he learned, emitted a soft melodic sound that could have been laughter. Marcus's heart lifted. For all the alien strangeness, for all the potential danger, they had begun a conversation without words, threaded with humor, mistakes, and tiny, earnest gestures of trust. By the time the forest canopy shifted with a swirl of glowing spores and distant, hovering creatures flitted above them, Marcus and Lyara had established a fragile, yet unmistakable connection. The trap incident, terrifying at first, had transformed into a shared, slightly ridiculous adventure. Marcus, grinning despite the scratches and bruises, decided that the day had turned out better than expected. Perhaps catching rabbits was overrated anyway. Sometimes, he thought, catching the impossible and learning to navigate the chaos together was infinitely more rewarding. And somewhere in the gentle hum of the alien forest, punctuated by her rhythmic ear flicks and his clumsy mutterings, a bond was quietly beginning. A bond that would, if nothing else, make surviving alien forests a lot more interesting. Marcus trailed behind Lyara as she hovered lightly above the phosphorescent undergrowth, her long ears twitching with every subtle sound of the alien forest. The air was thick with a soft, humming energy that made his hair stand on end, and his stomach do unplanned somersaults, and he could feel the odd tug of gravity that occasionally nudged him forward, as if the planet itself were urging him to hurry. Every time he took a cautious step, a floating, jellyfish-like creature would drift past, tentacles pulsating with light, and Marcus would nearly trip over his own feet in an effort not to startle it. "Right," he muttered under his breath. "Nothing weird about floating bioluminescent jellyfish in the air. Totally normal day in alien forests. Just keep calm." His fingers grazed the glowing moss, which recoiled slightly like a shy animal, and he jumped back, whispering apologies to a plant that probably couldn't understand him. "Sorry, little guy. Really, it's just my human clumsiness. Nothing to do with interstellar diplomacy." Lyara glided ahead, every movement precise, almost ceremonial, as if she were performing an invisible dance with the very air. Marcus had noticed how her ears flicked to indicate curiosity, skepticism, and occasional amusement, though he wasn't always sure which was which. At one point, she paused mid-hover, tilted her head, and emitted a series of melodic hums that sounded remarkably like she was laughing at him. Marcus, crouching behind a glowing rock to avoid being too forward, whispered, "Yes, I'm aware that I just tripped over a root and flung a floating jellyfish sideways. I take full responsibility." He peeked out from behind the rock and Lyara's ears twitched upward, a signal he interpreted as either delight or disbelief. Either way, it seemed positive. "Progress," he said to himself, and immediately stubbed his toe on another root. He yelped, clutched his foot, and whispered, "Ignore that, still progress." As they ventured deeper, Marcus began to notice small peculiarities about the forest that defied any earthly logic. Rocks drifted lazily above the ground, not quite defying gravity, but instead obeying some whimsical law he couldn't yet grasp. Tiny, glimmering insects moved in synchronized patterns, leaving trails of light that spelled indecipherable symbols in the air. One floated close to Marcus's face, and he recoiled, accidentally flinging a sticky, glowing nut toward Lyara. She caught it mid-hover with perfect balance, letting out a melodic sound that Marcus decided must be amusement or approval. "See," he whispered, "I'm contributing to the ecosystem, accidentally but effectively." The farther they moved, the more Marcus realized that Lyara's movements were guided by a deep understanding of the forest's subtle energies. She hovered over floating streams, landing lightly on driftwood that seemed too delicate to support her weight. Marcus, attempting the same, promptly sank halfway into the luminous water. "Note to self," he muttered, wringing out his soaked pants, "air currents plus buoyant wood do not equal human balance." Lyara turned back, ears flicking rapidly, and emitted a melodic hum that was unmistakably laughter. Marcus raised his hands in surrender. "Yes, I get it, clumsy human detected. Move along, learning slowly." Despite the absurdity, Marcus began to enjoy the rhythm of their journey. Each small misstep, each failed attempt to mimic Lyara's graceful movements, became a shared joke. He discovered that she had a habit of perching briefly on floating vines, observing him silently with sharp, intelligent eyes, and that her humor, though alien, was unmistakable. When he tried to step onto a drifting rock to match her altitude, he misjudged and nearly fell, flailing dramatically, arms windmilling. Lyara's ears twitched with what Marcus finally recognized as genuine amusement, and he bowed midair with an awkward flourish. "Yes, yes, I am the comic relief of interstellar travel. Please hold your applause." They came across a grove of alien trees whose trunks spiraled in impossible geometries, branches twisting like corkscrews toward the sky. Strange fruits, luminous and spherical, hung from them, pulsing with soft energy that seemed to resonate with Marcus's heartbeat. Lyara hovered near one, plucking a fruit delicately, and offered it to him. Marcus eyed it warily. "Do you think this will explode, or transform me into something horrible?" Lyara emitted a musical trill that seemed to say, "Probably not, but who knows?" He gingerly took a bite, grimacing as the fruit's texture shifted from firm to gelatinous and emitted a faint sparkle across his tongue. "Okay," he said, face contorting, "tastes explosive in concept, edible in practice. I will survive this." Lyara hummed and Marcus was certain it was laughter at his expense. Right, fair, I accept your judgment. Time passed in strange, elastic stretches. Marcus lost track of hours as the forest warped subtly around them. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Light shimmered in impossible angles and distant sounds. Alien bird calls or perhaps machines echoed in dissonant harmony. Yet in this chaos, a rhythm formed between him and Lyara. He learned to anticipate her pauses, her subtle gestures, the flick of an ear that meant wait or watch out, and the tiny tilt of her head that meant do try harder, human, I dare you. One misstep sent him tumbling into a patch of glowing moss, which squirmed under his weight like a startled cat. Lyara hovered above, watching, ears flicking, and Marcus muttered, Yes, yes, I am testing the floor's resilience. Very thorough research. You should be impressed. She responded with a melodic trill that he was fairly certain meant, You are a ridiculous creature, but amusing enough to follow. Eventually, they reached a clearing where gravity shifted enough that both of them floated a few inches above the moss. Lyara demonstrated the correct way to navigate the area, gliding smoothly, one hand trailing in the air as if conducting the very energy currents around them. Marcus attempted the same, flailing, arms slicing the air, feet tangling in floating roots, and emitting a string of involuntary noises. Lyara tilted her head, ears twitching rapidly, before emitting a sound he decided could only be laughter. Marcus offered a sheepish grin. Yes, yes, I am the human equivalent of a comedy hologram. Please enjoy the show. Despite his failures, he noticed a growing sense of trust forming. Lyara allowed him to float alongside her without retreating, nudging him subtly when he strayed into dangerous energy currents, and sometimes offering a reassuring hand. Marcus, in turn, spoke softly, narrating their surroundings, joking about invisible hazards, and commenting on his own incompetence in ways that made Lyara's melodic responses seem like genuine approval. They became a rhythm, she guiding him, failing, both laughing or attempting laughter amid the alien grandeur. At one point they encountered a floating pond, its surface rippling with energy that reflected the swirling sky above. Marcus, trying to mimic Lyara's graceful movement across its edge, misjudged and plunged partially into the glowing liquid. Lyara hovered above, ears flicking in rapid sequences, and emitted a trill that Marcus chose to interpret as applause. He wrung his soaked tunic, muttering, Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement, really, very motivating. She responded with another hum, and Marcus swore he caught the faintest curve of a smile. As the sun, or whatever celestial body illuminated the sky, dipped lower, casting shifting prismatic patterns across the forest, Marcus realized that their adventure had become more than survival or curiosity. He had started to understand the delicate humor and intelligence behind Lyara's actions, the way she communicated not just with words but with gestures, tilts, and hums. Every misstep of his own had become a bridge rather than a barrier, a shared absurdity that allowed trust to blossom slowly, gently, amid the alien strangeness. By the time they paused to rest atop a floating rock drifting lazily in the shifting gravity, Marcus found himself genuinely relaxed for the first time in hours. Lyara hovered close, watching him with those expressive, long ears flicking in rhythm with his heartbeat. He offered a small, glowing snack as a peace offering, or perhaps just to see if she would laugh again, and she accepted it without hesitation, a faint trill escaping her that he decided was a laugh, or maybe a compliment. Marcus grinned, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. Okay, he whispered more to himself than to her, we are surviving, we are communicating, and somehow we are laughing, mostly at me, but that counts too. He extended a hand toward her, awkwardly balancing on the floating rock, and she reached out in response, ears flicking with what he interpreted as approval. The alien forest, with all its luminous quirks, floating life and dissonant energy, had ceased to feel threatening. Marcus, dripping and exhausted, realized that for all its dangers, it had become a place of discovery, of humor, and of fragile trust forged in the most unexpected circumstances. Lyara's melodic trills echoed softly around him as they drifted side by side, a pair of mismatched companions learning to navigate an impossible world together, one misstep and one shared laugh at a time. And somewhere in the strange glow of that alien dusk, Marcus felt a tiny spark of hope that perhaps this absurd, hilarious, and dangerous journey had only just begun. Marcus and Lyara drifted toward the edge of the alien canyon, the terrain below undulating in impossible waves of color and light, as if the planet itself were breathing. Gravity here was playful, bending unpredictably, and Marcus kept one hand outstretched like a tightrope walker, wobbling precariously over the glowing chasm. "Note to self," he muttered. "Look confident, do not scream, and avoid falling to your doom." Again, his boots skidded slightly on a patch of floating moss, and he flailed, arms windmilling as Lyara hovered effortlessly beside him, ears twitching with what he was fairly certain was amusement. He grinned sheepishly. "Yes, yes, I am providing comic relief in case you forgot. Please feel free to judge liberally." Lyara tilted her head, long ears flicking, and emitted a melodic trill that Marcus interpreted as a gentle rebuke, or perhaps a laugh. He smiled, realizing that he had come to read her subtle cues with a mixture of careful observation and absurd guesswork, and so far, he hadn't completely misread anything catastrophic. Well, aside from his own balance. "Right," he said, "communication achieved. Half of it humorous, half of it terrifying, perfect ratio." The canyon below was alive with strange energy. Floating rock spires twisted in impossible geometries, some suspended in midair as if defying all logic, while streams of luminous water cascaded upward before curving gracefully to join the clouds above. Small creatures, translucent and winged, zipped through the air, leaving trails of iridescent light in their wake. Marcus leaned over the edge, craning his neck to appreciate the view, only to bump elbows with Lyara. "Sorry," he whispered. "I am human, clumsy, easily distracted, and apparently physically intrusive." Lyara floated a little higher, ears twitching rhythmically, and Marcus noticed the way the tips shimmered faintly in the canyon's ambient light. She extended a hand, and he hesitated for the briefest moment before taking it. The contact was grounding, reassuring. He realized that what had begun as a chaotic encounter, a trap, a panicked alien, his fumbling apologies, had transformed into something profound. Trust had been forged in the strangest of crucibles, with humor as its mortar and patience as its steel. Their journey to the canyon had been punctuated by small trials, each one testing Marcus's adaptability, courage, and sense of humor. He remembered tripping into the floating pond and being sprayed by luminescent water, earning Lyara's soft trill of laughter, the mischievous, jellyfish-like creatures that had collided with his head more than once, and the time he had mistook a levitating root for stable footing, only to spin comically in midair before landing on his backside. Each mishap had been a thread in the delicate tapestry of their growing bond, and Marcus realized he could no longer separate fear, joy, and absurdity. They were intertwined in the way only interstellar adventure could produce. "Careful here," Lyara's melodic voice, or perhaps thought transmitted in sound, warned as he prepared to step onto a floating rock that swayed gently over a glowing chasm. Marcus froze, weighing the options, then grinned. "Ah, yes. The classic test of interspecies trust. Step lightly, speak often, look ridiculous. Got it." He stepped, wobbling precariously, then hopped to the next rock with exaggerated effort, arms flailing, and ended up balanced by sheer accident. Lyara hovered beside him, ears flicking in what he read as amusement and approval. "See," he said triumphantly, "human ingenuity, completely unplanned and thoroughly ridiculous, works every time." When they finally reached the center of the canyon, a natural platform formed of floating rock that glowed faintly in resonance with the ambient energy, Marcus paused to catch his breath. He looked at Lyara and realized something remarkable. Despite the chaos, the missteps, and the entirely avoidable comic disasters, he had changed. Patience had become instinctive, observation sharper, and humor, a tool he had used instinctively to navigate embarrassment, had become a bridge to understanding another being completely unlike himself. He chuckled softly. Who knew that being terrified and clumsy could actually be useful? Lyara responded with a trill that sounded like laughter, and Marcus felt the warmth of genuine connection ripple through him. They sat side by side, hovering slightly above the glowing moss, observing the canyon below. Marcus marveled at the alien creatures that soared through the shifting light and water, noticing patterns he hadn't before. "They're coordinated," he murmured, "like a dance or a cosmic ballet." Lyara nodded, ears twitching, then traced a delicate line through the air, her fingers leaving a trail of energy that rippled outward, influencing the flow of the glowing moss and floating water. Marcus watched in awe. "Incredible," he whispered. "You've been teaching me this entire time without words, subtle, elegant, probably terrifying if someone else tried it." Lyara tilted her head, a soft trill escaping her, and Marcus swore he had caught the faintest curve of a smile on her lips. He realized that their shared humor, their clumsy mistakes, and their patient understanding had not only allowed them to survive the forest and canyon, but had also created a new form of communication, one built on trust, observation, and laughter. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair, or something like hair, behind her long ear, and she made a small sound that he interpreted as permission. The gesture, trivial in itself, symbolized the vast journey they had undertaken together, the quiet triumphs and shared absurdities that had built a fragile but unbreakable bridge between species. The sun, or whatever orb illuminated the sky, began to dip further, casting long, prismatic shadows across the canyon. Marcus felt a sense of completion, as though the trials, the missteps, the laughter, and the moments of fear had all led to this calm, shared presence. "We survived," he said softly, more to himself than to Lyara, "and somehow, I think we've learned something. About patience, about trust, and apparently about how ridiculous I look balancing on floating rocks." Lyara floated closer, ears twitching in gentle rhythm, and Marcus offered her hand again. She took it, the contact light but steady, a tangible proof that the trust they had built could withstand gravity's whims, alien flora, and the most improbable mishaps. Marcus laughed quietly. "I never thought a trap, a terrified alien, and a floating pond would lead to this, but here we are. Alive, mostly intact, and not entirely ridiculous. Well, mostly not ridiculous." As darkness settled, punctuated by the soft glow of the canyon and floating bioluminescent life, Marcus felt a profound change within himself. He had entered the forest clumsy, fearful, and unsure, yet he emerged tempered by patience, strengthened by humor, and enlightened by the depth of interspecies understanding. Lyara, floating beside him with her long ears twitching gently, seemed to reflect a similar transformation, a cautious being now willing to trust, to explore, and to laugh alongside a human who had begun as a complete unknown. The alien forest around them shimmered softly, alive with light and energy, yet it no longer felt threatening. Marcus and Lyara shared a look, each understanding the other without need for words, the laughter of their journey still echoing faintly between them. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "this was supposed to be about catching a rabbit, not whatever this is." Lyara responded with a trill, ears flicking once in amusement. He smiled. "Yeah, I thought so too." The canyon's glow reflected on their faces as they drifted side by side, suspended in the delicate balance of gravity and trust. Marcus realized that the forest, the trials, and the missteps had all been part of a larger lesson. Connection, patience, and humor could transform fear into understanding, and chaos into companionship. And in that vast, luminous canyon with alien life floating in strange patterns around them, Marcus and Lyara had discovered something rare and beautiful, a friendship that spanned species, fear, and space itself, grounded not in power or conquest, but in laughter, trust, and the willingness to reach out a hand, even when the world seemed impossibly strange. He breathed deeply, the energy of the canyon humming through him, and felt complete, not just as a survivor of an alien forest, but as someone who had learned to embrace the absurd, the unknown, and the fragile, luminous connections that made it all worthwhile. And as the light shifted and deepened around them, Marcus realized with a